sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
Welcome to a politically incorrect, yet otherwise correct, as always, version of Security Guy Radio. We have Chuck. This is for you, and this is for your horse, Harold. Hillary Weintraub. Now, for my future iHeart radio listeners, we will not say what I just did, because iHeart Radio is only audio. So so that will qualify, right, Mr. Driver?
I could describe it.
I can get away with that.
That was some very good sign language you were
Yeah, I
using.
could definitely describe it.
Of course, that's an old saying, because there used to be, 20 million horses in the United States. Now there's 100,000. So it was pertinent back then. But my old Uncle Jack used to use that one. I thought it'd be a good way to open the show
I'm
for
a
it.
fan of And the Horse You Rode In On.
Yes, for our politically incorrect show. I thought it was a perfect way to start the show.
They didn't
You
shoot
may
it.
disagree, but it doesn't matter because it's a politically
They didn't
incorrect
shoot
show.
the horses, did they?
No.
Okay.
How you guys been? It's been a long time since we've all been in the studio together.
It's been a while.
Months, I think, actually.
It's nice to see you fellas.
Yes.
I feel safer already.
Well, you should. This is the safest
This
studio
is the
in Hollywood.
safest studio in Hollywood.
For many, many reasons.
Absolutely.
So today I thought we would just talk about all the crap going on and just call it like it is. No, here's the rules. No swearing. We have to use fake words for swearing.
Wow, okay.
Well, no, because we want to qualify for iHeart Radio.
Got it. I'm on it.
That's the only reason.
I'll do my best.
All right. So we'll make up some words like, shenanigans
Fudge.
and things like that. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
right.
fudge.
So let's talk about, what should we talk about first? This terrorism thing? The shooting?
What terrorism thing?
Which one?
Oh,
right.
that terrorism thing.
Exactly.
Right.
So we were having a very
There's
good
enough terrorism.
we always
going
do
on.
a show before the show because we sit down here and wait for the camera to go off, and we forget everything we're going to say when we come on air because we had a great discussion about all this before.
Yeah, we should have just run it.
I know we should have. All right, so we got a guy that is, quote, radicalized. Let me just start by saying, what the hell does that mean?
Radicalized?
Yeah. Radicalized. What's it mean?
It means you're. Well, what does it mean? Means
It's another
going
made-up
nuts or something,
baloney
right?
buzzword,
Yeah.
okay?
Baloney word.
Yeah.
It's somebody who was in.
He was a nice guy before that?
Or moderate.
And somebody
Average
started talking to him.
and somebody got into a conversation with him and got more and more extreme, and any extreme of any ideology is considered radicalized.
So it's not a way of sort of protecting a religion?
To use the word radicalized?
Yeah. So if you say IRA, they were Catholic.
Radical
And
Catholics, sure.
well, nobody was radical then.
Yeah,
It was
nobody
just-
called it.
was they were Catholics trying to,
Maybe it was
make the IRA. make
presumed. They were
Ireland-
called terrorists.
They were called terrorists, but they weren't called radicalised.
But I think
They
It's a
weren't
new
called
word.
radicalised
I think maybe-
Catholics.
It's
I
a
think-
fairly new word.
I think maybe radicalized has taken on more. It's used more often now because ideology is coming to the forefront so much. It used to be the term an ideologue was a bad word. You didn't want to be an ideologue, and I think these days people are so. Their heels are so dug in on their ideologies that perhaps radicalized has become a common word to use to deal with the ideas.
I think part of the problem right now, as it exists today, is there's too many words. Listen, too many vocabulary words, right? Because there's a difference between, a guy that comes and shoots a school and a guy that says, Al Akbar, and I'm going to kill you in the name of religion.
Well,
It's
no,
not different to the
falsely
people
named
who get
religion.
shot.
He's a radicalised student.
Well, there you go, right?
He's radicalised, right?
But I
As a
think it. I
student.
think it is a way
Is that what it
to.
is?
I think-
Is it completely different from the term extremist? Do you guys feel like that's an important distinction to
Now,
make?
see what I'm saying. None of this matters. That's what I'm saying, right? Basically, all these people are what? Criminals.
Sure.
That's agreeable.
Yes.
They're committing crimes.
Yep.
So if we followed the law and we treated them like criminals without all the political nonsense and discussion, we'd solve a lot of these problems.
But if they belong to a group that's basically at war with the US, does
Okay.
that change?
There's laws for that.
Because it's not.
There's laws for.
It's not criminal, then, is it?
Yeah, there is. There's
Why
laws.
wouldn't it be
Is it still
criminal?
criminal?
Well, there's laws for
Well,
trying
that
to-
was the whole argument with, with the people that were captured during the Iraq War.
I mean the Guantanamo detainees?
Yeah. Well, I
No,
don't
no,
wanna
I'm
say
just
that
talking
word.
about in general, okay? So there's laws for everything.
You're getting in
We're a
trouble.
nation of laws, right?
Yes.
And if we followed immigration laws, we wouldn't have the big discussion we have. If we followed the abortion laws, we wouldn't have the discussion we had. If we follow the terrorist laws, if we follow the criminal laws, we wouldn't have all these problems. There's no discussion on it.
Well, the laws can be immoral. I mean, the state legislatures are doing a pretty good job using legal routes to restrict what had been considered a woman's legal right to choose.
So let's consider this guy in San Bernardino. And I don't know much about the case. We've read what they say, and all that stuff takes about 4 weeks to come out to be true. And then even that truth is massaged into what they want it to be, right? But the guy's out buying guns. I understand he had somebody buy him a gun and give it to him. That's probably not legal.
A straw
the two
purchase.
automatic weapons were bought by somebody else.
Right, and you can't just buy it. I can't buy it for you for a Christmas present without transferring it in California. Right?
But isn't that one of the loopholes that they're trying to close up?
There's no loopholes in California.
No, a straw purchase.
Not in California. If I buy a gun at the gun store, it gets registered in my name. I get my name's all over it. Background check, blah blah blah. I can't walk across the street and hand it to Jarvis.
You can't give it to him for Christmas.
No. I have to go and fill out some paperwork. I have to take it back to the gun store, leave it there, kind of an escrow is a good way to describe it, right? And while we do that, he doesn't get the gun until the paperwork comes in and goes like that.
That sounds like a good law.
That's legally,
Yeah, that's legally.
That
but
sounds
you
like
can still give it to somebody
after you do the process in California, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. That sounds like a good law to me.
See, we have a lot of laws that work, that function.
But I don't think that's true everywhere.
It's not necessarily true everywhere. But what you don't do is you don't say, Second Amendment, oh, that's no good. We're going to change that. We're going to get rid of it. No, it's a right. It's not a law. It's a right. Okay. And that ship has sailed, as you said, right? It makes sense.
Well, I mean, laws can, even the Bill of Rights can be amended. The Constitution allows for a process for an amendment.
So let's do that.
You had no chance, given our political climate, are we getting a constitutional amendment to the Second Amendment? I mean, it's just not happening.
And we don't amend it on TV with political rhetoric. We
100%.
amend it by going,
not
okay,
that it
let's
can't,
bring
not
it up.
that it can't be done in theory. It just can't be done practically right now. And so I think people who are focusing on that route are using energy that would best be used someplace else.
Right.
So why are people focusing on that route?
Well,
Because
I can't make it out.
It's
It's
a causation.
because it's disturbing.
why people are talking about it.
It's a
Because
causation issue.
Yeah.
People think that guns cause people to be killed. And send me an email, please, and argue with me, okay? But people kill people because, A, they're disenfranchised, they're separated from them emotionally, they're radicalized, they have agendas, it's political. I hate you, it's emotional, it's all kinds of things for, right? But it's just not a gun. So we did a little research on the gun thing. And so I'm going to tell my story, you tell your story, right? So what I found out, we take California and Britain, kind of close to the same size. Britain's got 53 million people. California has 48. Square mile-wise, California's a little bigger. But if you look at 2012, they had some statistics on homicides. California had 1,699, let's say, right? And of those, 1,200 were homicides with a gun. But in England, where there's no guns and guns are against the law, nobody has a gun, 58 people got killed with a gun. So if you say we're going to outlaw guns because that's going to solve people shooting each other, it's not going to solve the problem of people shooting each other.
Wait, did you just compare 1,200 to 58?
Are you comparing one life was more important than
I'm
1,200
not,
lives?
but if you're going
It's the same thing.
if you're going to talk statistics,
Let me
that's a
tell
pretty
you.
big
Let me tell you how
gap.
you compare the statistics, because this really annoyed
Well, let me
me
finish
over
my
the
one
weekend.
point.
Oh,
So
go on.
600, close to 700 people were killed in England, homicide in general, right? And of that, about 58 were guns. But one of the people that argue say, well, we got to get rid of guns and that'll solve all these killings. It doesn't, because there's countries that don't have guns where there's killing. In fact, with the countries where there are no guns, the statistics show that there's more violence in those countries, right, without the guns, right? Because the government is part of the violence in some areas, right? And we're talking about extreme,
Okay.
right? So if you look at all those numbers, and there was a Harvard report I put on Facebook a couple weeks ago. In 2005, a guy did an analysis on all these things and looked at all the countries that have guns. And, the basic idea is countries that have freedom of guns tend to be less crime, more safe, and that kind of thing. Russia has a homicide rate 2,000 times ours. Everybody got a gun in Russia? Don't think so. Don't think that's what's going on. Then you found some stuff on numbers.
Well, you know what? It really is, because as I say, over the weekend I got pretty annoyed. And if anybody's on my Facebook, sorry about posting so much on there, because it just drove me nuts. But I looked at it from a different angle. All right. What I did, because everybody says there's no guns in the UK, and by the way, there was never any guns in the UK. The whole gun banning thing, it was nonsense, because you could never own a gun in the UK.
Oh, before they officially passed the law,
it was
you
just
mean?
nonsense. You could never own a gun in the UK. But what I did, I looked at it, and this is pretty interesting, and you've got to follow me on this, right? So gun ownership in California is about, or there's not gun ownership, but there's 45 million guns in California.
More guns than people.
Okay. More guns than people. All right. So there's about 2,900 gun deaths a year in California. Okay?
Well, as of what year?
Well, what's interesting about the U.S. government and California is they don't give you recent
Oh,
years.
gun deaths might not be a crime,
Right,
though.
gun deaths. Right. Well, homicides by gun.
Okay, all right.
So, and by the way, what surprised me is California is the second highest gun ownership in the U.S., which is really interesting. So the English in England, there's no guns.
In theory, right.
No guns. Now, 44 people on average. You said 58. That was the
1
latest.
year.
Yeah,
high
I mean,
year.
it's
yeah.
about 44 people, so I dropped it down a little bit. So if you look at that, per gun, right, in California, there's 0.00006522 per gun death. In the UK, there's 44. So what that tells you is that the more guns, less deaths.
Well, that's another way to look at it, right? There's statistics, there's damn
Hey, did you
statistics,
get that?
and there's lies. I mean, you can manipulate numbers, right?
Man.
But
I
I know.
I was looking at it. I'm going, well, it doesn't make sense. If there's no guns and there's 44 deaths, when you look at
Right,
the
with
amount
zero
of,
guns, you do the math.
When you look at
right.
the amount of deaths in California, it's pretty small compared with the number of guns that are in California. So it's
Right.
not the guns, to your point. It's not the guns that cause a death.
It's so the,
You know?
the question is, what's
So
the
they're asphyxiating? How are they dying if the guns
Well, in
aren't
England they are
killing
because there's
them?
no guns in England. So it's obviously by a pea shooter or something because there's no guns in England.
Well,
except for
okay.
the people who manage
That's what
to
I mean. That's what
illegally
I
obtain
that's what I
guns.
listened to from the president talking about the UK. There's no guns in England,
well, if there's
and that's why there's no deaths in England.
close to 700
guns.
homicides a year and 44 of
Complete
them are
nonsense.
guns.
Okay, the
How are they
statistics
killing
and
each
the,
other
the
over there?
statistics and the numbers and the conversation about gun control goes on and on and on. And meanwhile, people are dying. So I think we need to find a more constructive conversation because not gun toting. I take that back. Gun enthusiasts are not giving up their guns. And right now, I kind of don't want them to when I look at how state of emergencies are put in place in other places around the world.
I agree.
That don't have guns. I think that's less likely to happen here with a bunch of people that have guns in
That's
their
right.
homes.
That's the whole point.
I think a police state is less likely, which is kind of the whole point. It's a little paranoid, but it's kind of the whole point. So on the right, not on the right, but on the Second Amendment enthusiast side, they have the Supreme Court behind them. They have the number of guns on the street behind them. It's not changing. So having
not gonna change.
So having a statistical conversation is not as useful as, let's say, how do we keep people from wanting to kill each other?
I agree with you. Right?
How do we do that?
The point of some of these numbers is just to prove that you can prove anything with numbers. And it
Right.
doesn't really prove anything, right?
Except that it makes my head explode because it
All right,
just
so
you're
here's the
going to go
question.
round and round with people.
Why do people use that and why do they attack it? In other words, here's what's happening. It's not that people are saying, I don't like guns, we're trying to save violence. What they're trying to do, in essence, is remove a right granted to you under the Constitution.
They're not. They're trying to solve a problem in the way that they think, because they're pacifists, would work.
Okay, but
Is-
getting rid of guns means you're getting rid of the Second Amendment, which
I got
is
it.
infringing
I'm
on your
with you.
rights.
I got it.
Okay.
I'm with you. I
So
don't disagree with you, but I'm
why
saying
aren't they
it's not
talking about
coming
causation? Why aren't those same people
I
want to
think
get rid
they
of it?
ought to be talking about causation. I think that they are afraid and they're frustrated, and people see guns and gun violence and they think, well, if we remove guns from the equation, we may have violence, but it won't be gun violence. And so it seems like a logical step to take. But it's a logical step if you don't have the Second Amendment, if you don't have 200 million plus guns already out in the community. I mean, the ship has
300.
or over 300. Okay, the ship has sailed. So let's have a conversation less about our guns and our right to our guns and restricting your guns and all of that, and instead have a conversation about how do we stop people from committing these atrocities. We do it by bringing them back into the community, in encouraging them to participate.
But the atrocities aren't
in
the
our
problems.
society.
The atrocities aren't the real problem with gun violence. the real problem with gun violence is Chicago over the weekend, 50 people getting shot.
Right, you're looking at those are disenfranchised people as well.
But you have to look at all of those issues.
I'm
you
with
can't
that.
just
I
look
agree.
at
Those are criminals, though. They're not
They are-
disenfranchised.
Of course, they're disenfranchised.
No,
someone's
hold
not
on.
someone's
Well,
not
I
a
think they
criminal.
are.
Somebody who has a job and a community supporting them does not commit crime.
I mean, I
Really?
think the hellhole. Well,
yeah, for the
I
most
got a
part.
few
For
politicians
the most
I think
part.
I can point to that
Sure.
dispute
Okay.
that.
For the
Crime's
most
everywhere.
part.
I have to agree here.
With who?
Hallelujah.
The hellholes that most of these people live in Chicago and Detroit and those sort of places, I'm amazed there aren't more killings.
Right.
You know.
Okay. But why do people commit crimes? And I'm not talking about violent crime. Let's
Because they
talk
have
about
no
crime.
opportunity.
No, or they have opportunity. All right, let's talk about the white collar crimes. Right, so
Okay.
I shoot somebody, that's not good. But Bernie Madoff taking $20 billion from somebody is really also not good. In fact, I can argue to you that that's more damaging than shooting some guy in a drug deal.
I'm with that.
All right, so
And most of those people get away with it.
right, so the question is, what's the causation issue? What's the causation factor? What causes this? What's the root? I'm with you. I think if we identify the cause of violence, it may help curtail some of it. But guess what? It's not going away because violence is a component of the human existence, and it's always going to be here, and it's always been here.
You got to deal with it in the same way that you deal with terrorists of these sort.
Right.
You take them off the street. And what I was saying earlier on, somebody's picked up, use it in a violent crime, carrying a firearm, they go to prison for 20 years.
But you know,
it's as simple as that.
It's simple math.
They're gone.
You can't imprison this problem away.
Yes, you can.
Well, I disagree with you.
You can.
There are not enough prison walls.
You've got to protect the law-abiding citizens in these places, and the way to do it is to take the unlawful people off the street. It's as simple as that.
I mean, this goes back to basic crime.
I'd pay an extra few bucks in taxes.
Let's
for a
not
new
call them
prison.
terrorists. Let's call them criminals. If you look at criminal justice and all that, how that all works, that's how it's always worked since the Bobbies invented it, right? Laws are deterrents. There's deterrents not to homicide, right? Not necessarily, but if you start putting people in jail and actually doing their crime, they're going to start thinking, I'm going to think of something else to do. Now, did you know they made it a law in California that if you rob somebody with a gun and you take less than $900, it's not a felony anymore? So you tell me how we are supposed to handle that sort of situation when we have legislatures and idiots and politicians that are trying to make this a political issue
Somebody
instead of
with an education who has economic opportunity does not pick up that gun to go rob somebody for less than $900.
No, they just embezzle your billions of dollars from you. Crime's crime, Hillary.
And they should go to prison.
And
for
they
the
should go-
rest of
and
their
they don't,
lives.
do they?
And they don't.
Right.
Nobody does anymore.
Nobody goes to prison.
You know.
Well, the guys who tried to rig the LIBOR, they're going to jail. But
The
for the
people
most
that go to
most
prison
part,
are law-abiding
right, for the
citizens
most
that
part,
go for a
financial
red
crimes
light.
do not.
They're the ones that go
end
to
up going
prison.
jail.
Yeah. So let's
So
talk
we
about
just give up
community.
to just human nature.
No.
We're just
No.
doomed.
No, let's talk about community. And by the way, I'm going to say this.
You're supposed to make me feel safer, Chuck. Not less
The
safe.
fact that you're in proximity to me should do that. I'm just saying. Mr. Jarvis, don't you feel safer when you come to the studio every week? Of course. See, there you go. Let's talk about your point of community, okay? So what we know about killers and John Burns. Remember John Burns came on the show a couple times about this? All right, so aggression, two types of aggression, cognitive aggression and emotional or primal aggression. I'm yelling and screaming in a fight, I'm mad at you, I hit you over the head with a hammer. Oh, I didn't mean to do it, it's an outburst. That's not so dangerous. I can deal with that. If I see you get mad, I can run. Cognitive aggression is a guy thinking of killing you. And what we have now, which is a flip, I think, is a whole bunch of cognitive aggressors, a whole bunch of thinking killers that plan your demise. That's much more difficult to deal with than, bank robbers and cops and robbers of the old days and, criminals on the streets and gun malls and film noir and all that kind of stuff we grew up with. This is a flip. These are people that are planning your demise. And if they're planning to kill you and they're true believers in it, how do you stop them?
I don't know, but you're scaring me.
What do you see what I'm saying?
There's nothing I can do. What do I do?
I disagree with you. Here's how
I put the alarm on my house, and I go get
you
a
carry a gun.
I go get a shotgun.
No,
Carry a gun.
you know why it won't work? Here's why it won't work. Because if your neighbor doesn't buy into their personal safety and your personal safety and accepting it for their own sake, it's not going to work, all right? So let's assume that everybody in the United States knew what Paul and I knew about security. Right? Everybody had exact same knowledge. And we're in a group, and we're at the gas station, we're at 7-Eleven, and there's 10 people around there, and one of those people decides to start acting the fool. And he's one of the group that supposedly is bought into taking care of his own personal safety. The other 9 people around us are going to say, wait a minute, I'm going to bring you back in to the community. Stop acting like an idiot, because if you keep going down that path, that's going to turn into a crime. It's going to turn into something, right? If everybody did that, everybody in the world did that, we would not need armies. We would not need all those things, okay?
I agree. And that's my point about dealing with people who feel disenfranchised
Right.
and marginalized. It's the exact theory. We just need it on a bigger scale.
Yeah, so here's some people that think this. Some people think that the government takes care of their safety. I'm going to be protected by laws. I'm going to be protected by the government. They're going to show me what to do. And there's a bunch of people, I think a lot of them that own guns, that say, I'm responsible for my own personal safety. One of those things is, if the zombie apocalypse comes, they're probably out of a gun, right? And they're accepting more personal responsibility. And people I know that own guns tend to be more independent, more open-minded about things. They're more accepting of people. But you can't walk up to them and start getting in their space and saying, I'm going to take something away from you. Or I'm going to start telling you what to do, because that's just not the personality, right?
And they support a woman's right to choose, and for
You'd be
their
very
neighbors
surprised.
to
I think
marry their same-sex
Well, I do.
partners.
And I've got
You know who the most
stacks of
So
guns.
glad.
You know who the most intolerant people are? Who are the most intolerant people? The people that use
religious
hate
types.
to remove hate. Oh, we have to go after those people because they're haters, but you're trying to get rid of them and turn off their rights and make them. You're trying to, villainize them and stuff. So people that try to get rid of hate fight hate with hate, and people that tend to be a little more conservative tend to be, you know what, this is my space, that's your space, let's live and let live. I think you're wrong about that.
So it's the liberals who are trying to
Yeah, it's
stop.
liberals that cause most of the problems.
That's what I
There's
was
no
saying.
doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. Because what are they trying to do? They're always trying to tell me how to live my life. I'm smarter than you. I have a better way to do it.
What's so interesting
You look at what's
is
going
that
on in
what's so
universities.
interesting
Look at
though.
the universities.
I got it. The political correctness has gone off the charts, but I don't think that that's actually liberal conservative. I think that is a new generation of people who feel something called a microaggression. So political correctness isn't about liberal or conservative. It's about emotional responses to language or to.
Okay, I can
So
see that.
I think that's a different conversation. But I just think it's so interesting because you sound so much like my friends on the left who feel like conservatives are going after their right to choose who they want to marry, that they feel that they have no good faith partner to speak to on that
I think
side.
those are myths. I got to tell you. And I know,
I
how many
sure
thousands of
hope
people do I know?
so.
How many thousands of people do I know? A lot, right? Paul, you've known thousands of people in your career.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I can't think of anybody that thinks that way.
No, I don't know anybody. And I get along with
You know?
everybody, by the way. I get along with you. I think you're wonderful. I think you're a great person, right? I think you're middle of the road. I think you're moderate. My neighbor, completely on the left about, we need to take away this, we need to take away that, we need to stop this and stop that. Why don't you just stay over there in your house and relax? Let people do what they want to do, and unless it comes to your front door, don't worry about it, right? But there's anybody that wants to come to me and say, I need to take away your right, I need to teach you how to think, this whole new thing on words, what's the thing that Jerry Brown got rid of? The word he took out of the state.
Illegal alien.
It was something like that.
No, it's illegal alien.
It's illegal
Yeah.
to use a certain word in
Well,
state
and
papers.
by the way, in federal law,
Right.
it's still.
All right. So what
still
people
law.
don't see is that history repeats itself. When you start saying we're going to take away rights, we're going to take away words, we're going to say that that's hate speech. Don't get me started on hate speech, because if I kill you, don't I kind of hate you in the first place, right? When you start doing that, you start taking away people's rights. People that are more conservative, they're self-sufficient, say, wait a minute, no, I'm not bothering you. What are you bothering me for? And they're going to get a big pushback on that.
I'm just saying that people on the left would verbatim use the argument that you just used.
That's right. And it's logical, right?
Right.
But I think, and by the way, you know me, I've never registered for any party. I don't believe in groups because I make them on my mind and stuff, much to my demise, I must say, a lot of times, right? But really, I'm going to join the Republican Party and vote this way. Well, that's not logical. Or I'm going to vote the Democratic side. That's not logical.
Right.
I'm not going to vote.
I think we have three unaffiliated
Yeah,
political.
I'm not
Big
voting
time.
I'm not going to vote for
people
Hillary
here.
because she's a liar and a thief. So I'm not going to vote for her. Right? I don't care if she's a Democrat or Republican.
Right.
And Trump's an idiot. All right, but he's a leader, so he may win on that front. All right, so
Scary
people
talk.
have to make up their own minds, and I think this is the problem. So if people had accepted individual responsibility for their own personal safety, a lot of this stuff would go away.
That's why
Literally.
That's why I shared that video on dealing with a workplace shooter, any kind of active shooter, to understand that the how to respond.
Oh, run, fight, hide.
Run, hide,
Excellent advice.
Run,
Fight.
hide, fight in that order.
Well, I'd fight first.
Good. Oh, well, I'm glad that there are people like you out there, but
No, that's what we would do. We would engage the guy immediately.
right, but you guys were cops. It's a little different.
No, but see
The
that,
average person working as an assistant in an office somewhere isn't going to necessarily have the training or the ability to really stand up and fight against somebody carrying an assault rifle. They need to know that their best option is to get out of there.
well, I'll tell you what they're trained to do. They're trained to not move. They're trained to get under a desk. They're trained to go on a fire drill because that's what you're
Right.
trained when you're in 6th grade.
Right.
And unfortunately,
Right.
under stress, you will respond immediately to that
Well,
training.
that's why having this run, hide, fight in that order, sort of understanding
Yeah, what-
is
what it-
important. And that's all we have at this point. It's like people wanting to have a conversation on climate change and talking about whether it's man-made, whether it's God, whether it's this, whether it's that. It's happening. So individuals need to be prepared for rising tides, longer droughts, bigger fires, whatever it is, whatever the climate is and the conditions are where you live, what the extreme weather is going to be where you are. It's important for you to know how to deal with it, because shouting at it and protesting in the street isn't changing it.
Now, supposing 25% of those people last week had been armed, what do you think the result would have been?
0 deaths.
You told me that even cops who have all the gun training miss 80% of the time. Now you're going to have a school teacher that's going to take out somebody with better precision than the cops with their training?
Why? Hold on.
You can't have it both ways.
Yes, you can. Why do they miss 85% of the time?
You would be the one to have the answer
Okay,
to that.
because they're engaged in a firefight with somebody that's shooting at them or aggressive with them,
Right.
and target acquisition goes out the window. First of all, let's talk about
Well,
science.
why would that be better for a school teacher than it would be for a cop? who
I'll tell you the
spends more time
science.
training?
Here's the science, okay? The reason people get shot in school shootings, or I don't know much about San Bernardino, but I'm assuming they're all sitting around a banquet table at a party, right?
Yeah.
They're
They're sitting
not
in a
moving.
room.
They're stagnant, okay? It's because they're not moving, right? That's the bottom line. I miss because the guy I'm trying to shoot that's trying to kill me, he's moving, and I'm moving, and we're going like this, and we're moving around, okay? So target acquisition, it's science. A bullet goes in a straight line for a very short distance, a very straight line, and then it'll drop off eventually if distance, right? But for the most part, if you're within 10, 20, 30 feet, and you point that gun at the right direction, it's going to hit its target. Except if my target acquisition is interrupted, and my sight is interrupted, and my focus is interrupted. So, example, I point my gun, at Starbucks across the street, and I aim for the sign, and I probably could get pretty close and hit it. Except if you throw a can of peas at me, like some teacher was proposing back east, and I flinch and I move that gun half an inch or an inch to the right, the farther away the target is, the greater the miss. You follow me? If I'm right here, I'm not going to miss you. If you're 100 yards away and I move it this way, it's going to go 5 feet to your right. All right, so during target acquisition of a shooter, they have tunnel vision, they're focused, they have a mission, and they're shooting people that aren't moving. That's why they have a high success rate. So the first point, if you move, you've already increased your chances of surviving exponentially.
Right, but that we've already discussed. Run, hide, fight is a good way to deal with it. But you were saying that if somebody else there had a gun, there wouldn't be any deaths.
You know
but
what? Here's why.
But you're saying that
I'm-
cops who
I'm-
are trained all the time miss.
But when
so
you
why
walk in
is
the-
it that now a school teacher who doesn't have any training,
I
except
happen to have an answer for that. It's because in a firefight with a bad guy, we're both shooting each other, dodging bullets. The guy that walks in, you can watch all these videotapes. They're all on the web about shooters. A lot of them get caught on tape. They're walking into a place nice and quiet. They're nice and calm. They have a 1,000-yard stare. They look like a zombie. And they're moving nice and slowly. And they're going pop, 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 while everybody else is on the ground. So when he walks in there like The Walking Dead, and I'm sitting in a chair having a piece of birthday cake, I go, hey, a-hole, pow. Okay? He's not a hard target to hit.
If 25 people
You're
in
a
there had had
cop.
guns, they may have killed a few people, but they wouldn't have
No,
done the
it
damage
wouldn't
that
happen.
they did.
No.
You know,
Do I think we should all
there's no
carry
doubt about
guns? I'd like to roast marshmallows and hold your hand and sing Kumbaya. That's what we should live in. But guess what? We don't live in that society. And we haven't lived in that society since the beginning of man. And it's probably going to be, a couple more Star Trek episodes before we all love each other, all right? So what we have to do is to solve the problem for now, not solve it for what we want it to be. And I agree with you. I want it to be violent-free, but it's not. So you don't solve violence by trying to fix something to make it violent-free. We're going to get rid of all the guns and we're going to the violence. No, because the bad guy still can have a gun. And by the way, does a bad guy actually think or care that he didn't register his gun or follow the gun? Well, I can't kill everybody, Jarvis, because it's against the law to buy a gun at the gun store. I better not do that. No, it's a homicide's a greater included offense of the weapon of violation of buying the illegal gun.
And how does the more guns help the? How many people did you say in Chicago were killed over the
This
weekend?
average of 50.
Right. So more guns.
45.
Does more guns help in that scenario?
Am I saying
too?
more?
No.
Not saying more.
Yeah, but I think
I'm just asking a question.
it's a little bit different in Chicago because that's gang related. Now, the terrible thing in Chicago is if you're a law-abiding citizen sitting in your house, you haven't got the right to protect yourself because you haven't got the right to own a gun. The only people who've got a right to own a gun in Chicago are the criminals.
Yeah, if you look at the studies,
absolutely ridiculous.
I gotta-
New
So
York's the same.
so you
Detroit's
think
the
more
same.
guns in that scenario is better too?
Yeah, I do. I think if you're in your house, you should have the right to protect yourself against the gangs.
and if you look at the
I
studies,
truly believe that.
places where there are strict gun laws in Washington D.C. and nobody can have a
Yeah,
gun.
it doesn't work. Right,
Everybody-
it doesn't work.
Highest homicide right around,
Yeah,
right?
it's
I mean,
ridiculous. And
it's just
anybody that
strange.
argues with that is.
Yeah.
Now, the argument is that there's loads of guns in the United States that can be brought in, and that's why it's a gun-free city. But you get back to the UK and France, gun-free countries.
Right.
And the UK especially because it's an island. So it's not that easy to bring guns in.
So I think
It doesn't make
you know,
sense.
we should have no wars and we should all get along. But that's not what's going on. We should be there. We should have that. But you can't solve the problem of people getting shot at the mall by saying, let's take away guns from everybody. It's only bad guys can have guns.
So there's your answer to
I'm
terrorism.
not the one proffering the idea of taking away anybody's guns.
Oh, I know that.
But
I know, I know.
you wanted to come up with an answer as to how to stop some of the killings that are going on from the
Let me ask you
mass killings.
If, let's say we have, in the next 30 days, we have 30 shootings. One a day is going to come. We know it's happening. Somebody's going to shoot somebody somewhere. And every one of those victims at every one of these shootings that's going to happen turns out has a gun. And every one of the shooters eventually just gets shot immediately and walks in the door. Pop, dead. Pop, oh, I got one gunshot off, dead. Do you think that's going to change the way people think about being an active shooter? Is it going to say, well, that's not going to work. I can't be immortalized with that if I get shot walking in the door the first time, because part of their mentality is, I'm going to be on TV and I've got my 50 minutes and I'm going to get you guys, but I can't get you guys that way.
Every active shooter incident has been in a gun-free zone.
Yeah, I know.
So what is?
And by the way, why do they all have
What
bombs
does that
now?
mean?
Okay.
They all have bombs now. This is
Okay.
the new thing, right? The bombs.
The pipe bombs, right?
Yeah.
So what does the average homemaker like me do in this scenario?
Okay, this goes back to your point, which I think is a point well taken. When we see people moving out of the social circles, immediately we want to start looking at bringing them back in some way, right? And what is it? Is
Oh
that
my
Big Ben?
God,
Big Ben
that's
is
my
here.
phone.
Oh,
Who's calling me?
Mr. Jarvis,
It's
it said-
an insurance company. I
No,
think.
that's the cue for our commercial, isn't it, Mr. Jarvis? Hold on, let me introduce us now. So we got a sponsor.
Oh, it's probably somebody.
Yes.
It's probably somebody complaining
That's
actually
exciting.
about what we're talking
That's
about.
probably true.
No, we got a sponsor, Ariata Salon and Spa on Kenneth Village. You know where that is in Glendale?
Yeah,
Nice little place. So I shot a little commercial for them, and we're going to play this in a minute, and we'll talk about what it looks like after that. Mr. Jarvis,
Very nice.
are you ready to go? All right, let's play it.
Hi, my name is Tanya. I'd like to welcome you to Ariata Salon and Spa, where you can be your own kind of beautiful. We're a full-service salon and spa specializing in hair, nail, and skin services. We offer gift certificates and packages so you can give the gift of beauty to someone you love. We use only the finest professional products so you look and feel your best. Our experts will help you pick a professional product to use at home to keep you feeling great. Thank you for joining me at Ariata Salon and Spa. We hope to see you for all of your holiday services. Come spend the day with us. We're located at 1403 West Kenneth Road in Kenneth Village, Glendale 91201. Call us for an appointment at 818-242-8115 and visit us on the web at www.ariatasalonspa.com. Hi, my name is Tanya.
What do you think, Mr. Jarvis? Not bad. All right, not bad. And I partake of their services. Saw Tanya over there and had a haircut.
Very handsome.
I thought it was not bad.
I was going to
They
comment.
said I got to get rid of my bouffant. I got to stop the Pepe Le Pew comb back. I got to just kind of let it go like flat on top. So I'm going to give it a try.
Well, okay.
No manscaping. I didn't do any manscaping.
So no dying. You're not going to.
way too-
you
way too
dying
much
at grey like that
information.
just to look.
Too much.
Go see Tanya. She'll take care of it. It's a great salon.
Very
Very
nice.
nice. All right. So back to our topic.
Oh no. Okay. So Hillary Homemaker.
Hillary
Right?
Homemaker. What can you do?
In living in the wild, wild west near the OK Corral, because now everybody has guns, and I'm going to choose not to have a gun, right? Because I don't think that
That's okay. That's your right.
You're right. It's not something that makes me feel safer. The idea. So how am I meant to navigate the Wild West?
Well, I'm not going to use you personally as an example, right? Because I think you're moderate and reasonable, as I think I'm reasonable and moderate.
They're not asking for my political affiliation before they try and
let's turn on the TV
take my car.
and let's talk about alienation. Let's talk about marginalization. Let's talk about all those things. Because all you hear on TV all day is a bunch of crap and baloney, one side or the other, right? About how their side's correct and their side's correct, and it's crazy. It's just
polarizing.
It's polarizing, right?
Yep.
Now, if we had another 9/11, what happens to Americans? Americans are the best of this in the world. All come together. Oh, forget about that. We'll go back to fighting later. But right now,
Only for a short time.
Short time, but it works, right? So I think the first thing people can do is just stop thinking that everything you see on Google is true, anything you see on TV is true, anything you see on Security Guy Radio is true. It is true, but don't think it all the time, and start thinking, critical thinking. There's no critical thinking anymore.
That's
there
true.
really isn't, right? And the reason that the gun law is not an easy thing to solve, or the gun problem, or the abortion problem, or all these problems aren't easy to solve, is because there's people's rights, and they're already there, and those things exist. And since they're there, we got to move away from rhetoric and move into what are the causation issues, I think, right? But again, accepting your own personal responsibility means not talking smack about your neighbor and making him the guy that you don't invite to the holiday party, right? I know this sounds oversimplified, but that's what happens. That's how it works. The weird guy down the street with all the cats is that way because nobody invited him to the Christmas party, all right? And those are what starts the isolation and starts the removal of people emotionally from the society, feel they don't belong, and then they feel like I got to act out and show you I'm bigger, smarter, stronger, whatever.
And they can be easily exploited by extremist or radical ideology.
If nobody's talking to you and somebody walks up and whispers in your ear that you're the only guy talking to me, paying me attention, then
and
it
you're
makes no
powerful,
sense.
and all, you
Right.
know, you have the ability to make real change in this world, what have you.
Now, the other thing I think is a problem, and by the way, we had a great, while you guys were gone, I did 4 shows with the psychological associates out of San Francisco, 4 psychologists, clinical psychologists, and we talked about some of these things, right?
Fascinating.
It was really interesting because there's a huge gap between clinical mental health and criminal mental health. In other words, if I call you a pedophile, that's not a sexual registrant. All people that register as sex offenders are just sex offenders. If you happen to get arrested while you're going pee behind the bar, you're a registered sex offender. All right, but clinically,
So you mean I've got to stop that?
you have to stop that
Okay.
immediately,
Dang.
especially behind my house. You really got to stop that part. So I think what we have in society is the TV saying, here's what the definition of a shooter is. Here's what the definition of Islam is. TV gives things a definition, and that's not necessarily a real definition, either legally, right, or maybe morally, or whatever you want to call it. And there's this huge disconnect between these definitions of things, and therefore people trying to solve problems based on false definitions. I mean, I think that causes all kinds of rhetoric and all kinds of fighting. It's about. I think
that's right. I think people have difficulty agreeing on terms. Right.
Right.
If we could just.
What's the definition of that?
What does that mean? Can we all agree on what that word means so that we can have a discussion about it? Because until then, you think it means this, I think it means that, and we can't come together.
You can't. And I hear people saying more things about the first thing people talk about in a shooting is what? The gun. They don't talk, They don't talk about the suspect. They don't talk about the victims. It's all about guns. It's about guns. Let's find out why Billy wanted to kill you in the first place. And if Billy didn't have a gun, Billy would do what? He'd use a machete like they used in China. Remember that thing in China?
Yeah.
At the school, the machetes, right? And then you get things like the president on the news saying, it's the only country where these things happen. That is the biggest freaking lie I've ever heard in my life.
It was really bad. It was a really
It's
bad
a ridiculous
porcupine.
lie.
That's
It's
called a
just frequency.
porcupine in England.
It's frequency.
He didn't say that.
I get it.
Okay? Now,
I get it.
Yeah, but that's not true either.
It doesn't. Well,
In mass killings, the
happens
US
all over the
comes
place.
ninth.
Yeah.
It comes ninth. It's a complete
I know.
lie. It's just a complete lie.
So to your point, Hillary, which is a
And
great
why?
point.
I don't know why
I'm
you
gonna have
keep
to look
saying
that-
that. I really
that-
don't
I'm
know.
going to have to check the
It's
stat
the
on
truth.
that.
Fact check.
I'm going to have to fact
It's the
check that
truth.
one.
Okay, but to your point about people susceptible to rhetoric, it cuts both ways. Let's say you're not on psychotropic drugs, you're not crazy, you're not doing a radio show, and the president says, it only happens here. And I go, oh, well, he's the president. I guess I better believe it. You are now going to change your way you behave, and you're going to act differently. And you're going to think, oh my God, it's a pandemic here. We're all going to get shot tomorrow. When in fact, that's not the fact. That's not the case. So if you're susceptible to radicalization and craziness, you're also susceptible to believing and drinking the Kool-Aid of a, let's call it, rational, nonviolent mentality.
Well, there's a lot of fear mongering. I mean, that's
Right.
I think the media is complicit with politicians in creating a great amount of fear. It keeps us home. It keeps us buying whatever products people want us to buy. It keeps us in line.
Oh, I agree.
People who are afraid are far more likely to do what they're told.
Right.
Well, the fact is, you've got a greater chance of getting killed just walking across the street.
Or hit by lightning.
Outside.
Right at the
Yeah.
I
sun.
mean, you
Yeah.
walk across there,
Okay.
sunset, you've got a problem.
So why would the president, and any president, by the way, I'm not picking on Barack Obama at all right, but why would he say something like that? That's just not factually true. It's not even close to true, right? You can Google that, and you can find countries with mass killings, and it goes blah, 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 and there's a big list. And
Is
it's
that the
over.
number of or the number of people who die in any
It
case?
depends
Number
on-
of people, well,
depends
to
on
be
how
a
you
mass
define it.
killing has got, I mean, it's pretty much accepted
Right,
to be a
but like
mass
the-
killing. It's
but-
got to be over 4 people.
No, I understand, but like the
You know.
the guy in Sweden or whatever killed 170.
Yeah.
So right. So is his number? Is that country's number higher than ours, even though it was just one incident?
No, I think it's incidents. Incidents of killings over 4 people. That's what you look at
Yeah.
in when you're talking about mass killings.
Well, again, to your point,
you know.
if the president says it's true, it must be true, and
See, but you
therefore we're
look
going to
at it-
act differently. And then, if you're acting the way he believes, how can you possibly solve the problem if you're solving it with false math? You know,
Well, and again, it sends this fear across. I mean,
Right.
you got people, cancelling their trips to Paris and all this sort of stuff.
so guess what?
I mean,
You might be
I
surprised.
mean, look at the news footage coming out of Paris right now, and the people who are trying to, protest or have their voices heard outside of the COP21, meeting. There's a lot of suppression in Paris right now. So I think that people are afraid for a lot of reasons, not just because of the terrorist attack, but because of the state's response to it.
Here's something that pissed me off after Paris. By the way, I'm all for Paris. They're kind of our Irish cousins in a way. Viva Paris and support, hashtag, all that stuff, right? And then we have 14-something people killed in San Bernardino. Where's all the hashtags for that? Where's all the support America, support San Bernardino? Where's all that social media campaign?
Well, I think it's because it's San Bernardino.
Well, but you know what I'm saying, right? Why,
not Paris,
why isn't
right?
there the same outcry?
Maybe it's
and-
because it's even if the statistics don't back it up, it feels like it's a more common problem in the U.S. than it is around the world. This isn't a
Why isn't the
typical
rest of
French
the world support?
issue.
Okay, but why isn't the world supporting? No, by the way, the French have been dealing with terrorism problems for years before we were. They've had the
But not on this scale. They didn't.
not on the killing
Yeah,
scale,
it's
but
pretty
just on a.
close, no. I mean, I was very surprised at the way they responded. I mean, the UK, terrorism for years, and nobody responded like that.
No,
I mean, it was
right.
7/7. I think people responded pretty strongly to the 7/7.
No, but people
attack.
just got on with their business.
But that's what we're told we're supposed to do.
Okay,
is to
Paris
get on-
didn't.
So-
Paris closed down.
Yeah,
because they thought they still had
you know.
active shooters.
Yeah, but in the UK, people would just get on the tube as long as it didn't interfere with your
Well,
tube.
but that's-
You'd ignore it.
right. But they didn't declare a state of emergency and shut everything down.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I was surprised at how Paris reacted because they're used to this stuff, the same as most of Europe.
well,
You
so
know,
to your point,
it
we're
was
manipulated.
peculiar.
I think they still thought it was an active, or continue to think that it's an active
was-
event, that it wasn't, the one.
I mean,
bomb
I don't
went
know the
off.
politics in France, but you got to wonder if there was another reason to react
I think it's.
so wildly.
I agree, and I think
No,
that
it's
the fact
their
that
opening to do it politically correct, and people support it because you couldn't have done it 6 months earlier, and you can't do it 6 months from now because now people are saying that's outrageous.
Right.
Go take care of business.
I mean,
mean,
what
that's-
has
that's-
happened is
that's
opened
shock
it up for the
doctrine.
National Front over there.
Right,
You know,
the
I mean,
Le
that,
Pen,
yeah,
right.
that's interesting. You know
Right.
what's going on now.
So that's
you know.
shock doctrine meets xenophobe, and you have a police state.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Right.
That's the potential danger, isn't it?
Right. I mean,
Right?
Egypt started its 40-year dictatorship under a state of emergency.
Yeah.
So it's hard if you're not aware of that. You're
These
not
are
paying
real things,
attention
by
to
the
what's
way.
happening.
A lot of friends of mine say, that's never going to happen here. That's right. You know why it's not going to happen here? Because you're not going to do it at my front door. I'm not going to let you. And people know that, right? They're going to try to do it another way, right? But back to my question. Why do we not get hashtags for San Bernardino the way the whole world got hashtags for Paris?
I think because
Because
of the
we're
name.
taught to no, it's because Americans are taught to feel guilty about these things. We're the problem because we're the society with all the guns.
I don't think so.
Ridiculous.
I think the name San Bernardino didn't reflect the way that Paris does. Now, if it had been New York, I think you would have heard a lot more. But San Bernardino,
No, it's an interesting question that maybe can't be answered, but there's no equity in any of this stuff, is there? It just depends on the political motivation at that particular time. It depends on the people. It depends on a lot of things. So, again, when the president gets on the news and says things that are completely not true and just not backed by any sort of facts, and people believe it, they're going to act differently, and they're going to act a different way to solve the problem. And it's not going to get solved because it's bad math. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. I mean, I was born in 75. I've had presidents lying to me my whole life. So that doesn't seem strange to me to have a politician try and quiet a nervous population by telling them something that makes them feel safe.
Does it quiet everybody, or do gun sales skyrocket every time?
well,
do
they
something
have.
like
They
that?
just
Well,
gone
but then
through
you're
the
saying
roof.
that, but you're suggesting that gun sales going through the roof would make us safer.
Well, in fact, they do. I
No,
mean,
they
it's pretty
do.
good.
So then it works.
know.
No.
Then he did it.
Yeah,
Good job.
But that's the point. they're trying to what they're trying to achieve. They achieve the opposite by doing all this nonsense. That's what I'm saying. If you really want to not have people buy guns, don't go around saying we're going to take your guns away. Just don't do it. It's ridiculous.
I've never heard anyone say they're taking anybody's guns
Oh,
away.
come on.
I mean,
Come on.
people affirmatively saying, I'm taking your guns away. I think people
The word
hear,
gun control means I'm
right,
taking your
people
gun away.
hear, I'm taking your gun away. But people who advocate for gun control don't say, I'm taking your guns away, just for the record.
And by the way,
that's
I
not
think-
the
I
rhetoric,
think-
that's
Really?
not the
But-
rhetoric they
Really?
use.
Okay, so when they proposed legislation in California last year, maybe it was this year.
It's the take your guns away law? Is that,
no,
is
it's,
that what it's called?
we're going to outlaw lead bullets because it's environmentally not safe.
Yeah, that was pretty close.
And so
to
we'll make
taking your
bullets
guns
out of
away.
gold. We'll make
Okay,
bullets
but
out
I'm
of
just
gold
saying-
instead
I'm just
because
saying
that's
that
going to work.
Nobody's saying we're taking your guns away. Nobody's
That's the
using
constructive.
that language.
If you say lead bullets are against the law in California, that's the constructive effect. If you don't have any bullets, you don't have a gun.
And how far?
You got a
did,
paperweight.
how far did that legislation go?
It got to the. It shouldn't have even got to the desk, but it got to the desk.
Yeah,
They're going to keep trying to
yeah.
pass it, just like they finally passed the driver's license law. Right. Let's talk about immigration.
Okay.
All right. Irish. Lots of problems immigrating. All right. At one point, 75% of the people in the
I'm
Civil
not
War were
surprised.
Irish. All right. But there was laws, and you follow the laws, and the country grew a certain way. I think the problem today is we're not following laws, and people disregard laws, and the smarter people than all of us, the intellectuals out there, are saying, that law doesn't apply to me. It's an unjust law, so we're not going to follow it. How about it's an unjust law, and you just change it legally, right? So if we followed the laws of immigration and said, Hillary, you can't employ people at your business who don't have the proper paperwork.
Right, that's the E-Verify system.
Right, and I've used it, okay? But not everybody uses it. And if it's not E-Verify, let's just say it's something else. And if they said, okay, we're not going to employ people that aren't part of the legal system, I'm not going to hire you, oh, guess what? They're not coming here for a job anymore.
And your head of lettuce is now $10.
Maybe, and maybe not. Maybe I'd send my lazy son up there to do it. Listen to me. Listen to me.
But do you
No.
save that money in taxes
I picked-
because you're not paying it
I
for
picked.
people that...
I used to go to Oregon
We're on
and pick
welfare.
strawberries every summer. Okay, I did that for 2 summers in a row. Got up at 3:30 in the morning, got in a truck, went out and picked strawberries, 8-10 hours a day. All
We
right?
can't all be you, Chuck Harold.
Thank God for that. There won't be a big problem. No doubt about that. Probably a lot of parking lots. So to say, oh no, the lettuce is going to, it's ridiculous. Because if it wasn't somebody picking it that was illegal, it would be somebody that was legal. It would get done.
Yeah, that's
They'd invent a machine for it.
Migrant worker. It's not. Migrant workers is part of the economy of this country. And I think that the immigration discussion is really a veiled discussion about xenophobia
No,
and about
no,
racism.
No.
I don't
Not
think
even.
you I
Not
don't
even.
think you I think you were honestly talking about rule of law and immigration laws and I believe you to have the integrity to truly believe that that's what you're talking about. But I think when the average American talks about their issues with immigration, they're not talking about white people coming from Europe. They're just not.
Let me speak as somebody who spent...
Go to Hollywood and
5
check out the Russian
years-
crime, and I'll disagree with you on that.
Let me speak as somebody who spent 5 years and a lot of money to come over illegally. I find nothing more annoying than people that walk across the border and don't go through that
Right.
system.
Right.
I mean, it's just, why we can't just do this legally, I don't know.
All the
I
laws
really
are there to
do
make it,
not know.
to do it right, by the way.
And for all those
I
people that
believe
are
you
still
guys.
standing in line, by the way, and going through what I went through, and what my family went through to get over here, it's completely unfair.
I agree 100%.
It's so unfair.
I agree with that. But I also think that do you support the Syrian refugees having a legal option of becoming American
I actually
citizens?
support the way that the UK is doing it, because they're going over to the refugee camps and they're picking families that are in the refugee camps.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And taking them back to the UK.
That's basically what they're doing here.
No, they're
it's
not.
It's a 22-month
not.
long process. Only 1% of Syrian refugees ever get in the queue for the U.S.
Oh, you're talking about post-crises. Now they're telling us we're just going to start grabbing people and bring them over.
By the way, all this stuff about background, the people, the woman that was involved in the terrorist attack on San Bernardino, she had a full background.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything. You've got to go and find where they're coming from and make sure that they are truly refugees. That's not what the United States is doing. They're not going across to those camps. And by the way, if they'd put some safe zones up, you wouldn't have any people coming over here. You wouldn't have Syrian refugees because they'd all be in the safe zones.
How do you make a safe zone in Syria?
It could have been done in the beginning when all the red lines were being laid, that were pink or blue or whatever the hell the red lines actually were.
You mean the use of chemical weapons?
Yeah, they should have just got in there, made some safe zones. We've got enough military with the UN.
I saw an article that there's 100,000
safe zones.
There's 100,000 air-conditioned tents sitting in Saudi Arabia, and the government says, "Well, we're not going to let anybody in unless we follow these particular rules."
Yeah, you could do it.
So,
and by the way,
but you know that Saudi Arabia is Sunni Muslim and the Syrians are mostly Shia Muslim, so it's a kind of a false promise.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not a false promise for people over here to say, you might be a terrorist, so we got to screen you.
But that's why Saudi hasn't taken one.
That's why Saudi isn't taking anyone.
They're not
so
taking
suggesting
anybody.
that they have these villages just waiting for Syrian refugees.
But you could have done
is
it in
nonsense.
Syria. You could have done it in Syria. You could have protected those areas if somebody, and I'm not going to mention their name, had actually stepped up and done something. You wouldn't be sitting here. Europe wouldn't be sitting here.
Okay,
with
we
that
wouldn't
problem.
be sitting here if we didn't debathify the Iraqis
And you could
after
still
the
do
invasion.
it. You've now got Russia involved. You could still do
You're
it.
giving Hillary a headache.
It's not giving me a
Are you okay?
headache. I'm fine.
Okay.
If you had somebody
just,
that could negotiate.
Quieter.
I'm just. It just
voice.
makes me
In a
nervous.
voice.
It
If you
makes
had
me
somebody
nervous.
that could negotiate, i.e. Trump,
Let's talk about
Oh,
that.
for crying out loud!
he could get
Yes,
with the Russians.
Donald Trump is going to go and solve the problems on the Syrian-Turkey border to keep having a hot
Well,
war
nobody
between
else is.
NATO and Russia. Donald Trump, 2016. No chance.
Let's talk about fear. You
Yes.
talked about briefly as a control mechanism, right? Mm-hmm. I tend to not be afraid of many things. I can't really think of anything I'm afraid of. In other words,
Then why are you sitting so far away?
well, that's off-camera discussion.
That's too easy.
You set me up for that.
Too easy.
All right, but seriously, right?
Yes.
So, first of all, I'm not a worrier. All right, if the problem is not in front of me or looming or imminent, it's not on my radar. I have a distance. I have a distance of proximity of people physically. I have a proximity to political issues. In other words, I think that's going to turn politically. I'm going to do something about it, right? But I don't sit around and worry about it. I wait till it presents itself. That's one sort of people, one group of people. Another group of people are constantly in fear of the unknown because they can't deal with the projection. They can't deal with anticipating what's going to happen next, and they worry about it. You seem to worry more than I worry.
I'm a little more of a worrier.
So
for sure.
what is the worry? Is it that you don't know what the outcome is going to be? It's that you don't have control over the outcome? What is it?
Well, I definitely feel like I don't have a voice. I mean, I was that.
Okay. That
I
makes
was-
you worried, though?
Sure, because I was that kid at 14 with H.W. Bush, standing in front of the federal building trying to stop him from going into wars back then, and knowing that that just doesn't get you anywhere. So you feel like you don't have a voice. No matter how many times you go to the Capitol or write letters to your congresspeople, it's not something that is going to make a difference. So
Why does that turn into fear and not into indignation, and I'm going to go do something about it?
Well, what more am I meant to do about it as a citizen
Well, I don't
than
know.
to peaceably assemble, to talk to my representatives? What more is it that I'm
Vote
meant
differently. You can vote differently. You can.
How many different ways can I vote? I mean, at some point, you recognize that as an individual, it is very difficult to make change on a federal level to stop a war around the world. 36 million people around the world rallied against the Iraq War, the second Iraq War. 36 million people and got nowhere.
Okay, so your fear, I'm hearing, is a lack of control.
Well,
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just
no, I
asking.
understand. I'm trying to articulate it. I think
You said you
Sure.
had no input. No, all right.
right. So feeling like my voice as a citizen really doesn't matter much.
So here's what I think. I think that Mr. Jarvis has given me the 5 hand. I got 5 minutes? Good heavens, it's gone by again. We can't solve the world's problem with an hour. I think make this a different show. 2 hours. Anyway,
2 hours we could fix everything.
we could probably. So here's how I think about it. I think that I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about instigating change because what I think about is acting individually, the way I act, I think creates the change. And by the way, you're a very
It's
responsible
very
person.
Gandhi of you.
Well, I think you are equally a responsible citizen, all right? And I'm not worried about you in the zombie apocalypse. You're going to be fine, all right? But you see it differently. You see it as powerless. I see it as power. I see it as me having my own freedom to make my own choices about things. And if it comes in front of me and it's a problem, I'm going to do it something. I'm going to act. So the question is, would you act if something came into your space? Would you have the conviction to act, or would you be fearful to act?
I'd like to think that if something was in my space that I would act.
Okay.
That I have enough, mama bear in me that I would.
I think you would.
I would respond in
Yeah.
that situation. But I think that I was raised with a certain moral consciousness that we have a responsibility to society as a country. I'm an American. I take that seriously, and I have a hard time dealing with actions that are taken in the name of Americans around the world.
So your fear might be a little feeling of powerlessness. You don't have control. You don't feel like you're in control of your own.
But the
destiny
other issue is what happens
because of
globally
other influences.
affects you eventually. I mean,
It
that's
does.
the problem.
Right. We talk about this. All
So you can see
security is
stuff
personal.
going on.
All security is
Yeah.
local, and all security is now.
Yeah.
Right. So if you act individually and everybody in this room acts the same, we're good. If we act on it locally, because it really matters what happens here, not what happens in Washington right now, and if we do it now, we're safer.
And that's all I feel like I can do is I try and make sure that I and my family are protected. Then once knowing that they're safe, moving to my friends, and then once all of my family and friends are sorted out, looking at my immediate neighborhood and community
Right.
and how best, and if and when that's all sorted out,
But
we
see,
can move to
safety,
the next level. But
your personal safety and the way you're acting is predicated on one thing. It only works if the guy really close to you is also acting that way.
Right.
Because if the guy to your immediate right over here is acting like an idiot, you're just not going to be safe no matter what you do.
all the time.
You see what I'm saying? So your fear is how many people are removed am I from people acting irresponsibly, right? Whereas if everybody
That's why a workplace shooting or a terrorist attack seems more frightening because it
it's
breaks,
closer to home,
Well, it also breaks your model,
right?
Because it's the guy next to me is, snapped, or the guy next to me
Oh no, they
came
never
in
snap.
from the outside.
They don't snap. That's a misnomer. So we only got a few minutes left, but
2 of them.
I mean that's just nobody snaps. And I'll guarantee you when this all settles on the San Bernardino, like all the other shootings, there's going to be some signs that if somebody said, "Wait a minute, we better call
I
somebody
think we
about
know
that."
that already.
We'll find
Yeah,
out some of
I mean,
that. All right,
you know.
listen, I got an idea for this year going forward. First of all, we got some really good shows coming up in January with the psychological assessment team from San Francisco about all kinds of psychological things because I think that's a quality of life issue, right? Mental health is a big problem in this country for that kind of thing. And I think maybe we ought to start doing some more timely stuff next year, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Maybe more news-oriented. This is the news this week. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's right because I think that's what makes me feel safer is trying to
Yeah.
practically deal with what are the facts on the ground and how do we deal with it as individuals.
And Paul and I have been
keeping us
talking to this since we did this 2 years ago, and we say it's all going to go to crap pretty soon, and it's starting.
Well,
This is the beginning.
our first show was about the zombie apocalypse.
And we said it's coming. It's
Remember?
going. I said you're going to have. Well, if you can find that show, which
and it
you
was
won't,
serious as well.
You can't find that show because I got rid of it.
Congratulations, Chuck. 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. It's amazing.
Good for you.
169 episodes. Very happy about that.
Congrats.
All right, so next year I think we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to take some advertisers. We're going to do some more remote stuff, more news-oriented things, and kind of get people more in the now for feeling safe immediately, and not as much maybe academia.
Noted.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Jarvis, did you learn something? Are you safer now than you were an hour ago?
Didn't want to know.
He doesn't know about that. No,
Probably less, right?
We failed. All right, we'll tune in next week for another exciting episode. We'll be doing a lot of shows on tape in the next month from my remote trip to Seattle and Portland. But once
Traveling Man.
Once in a while, we'll
Holy
pop in
moly.
live and we'll do a live show. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next week on Security Guy Radio.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming in, you guys.
Thank you, Chuck.